We are continuing with our Shoel umeishiv series with Rabbi Leib, Tropper Shlita. This is number 16. And what we're dealing now with, Rabbi Leib, if you forgive me, it's dini malchus dini, the laws of the land, particularly pertaining to being on the road, rules of the road, driving. Now, some of the questions which have come up are where we see that people seem to be lax or negligent even in laws pertaining to certain things that you would think we might not have to be so careful about, like a missing bulb. Is that such a big deal? I have a number of other questions, but let's start with that. The person's bulb is out. Does that represent a sense of urgency or being over dini malchus dini?
It's more than a problem of dini malchus dini, because that's a machlekes rishonim. What limitation is there to dina malchus dina? Some say it only applies to mominus. Some say it doesn't apply to only mominus alone. It doesn't. So let's not just deal with dina malchus dina. It's a bigger issue than dina malchus dina, which is, according to the poskim, one is not allowed, contemporary poskim, one is not allowed to drive with someone else whose headlight, one headlight is off. Even one headlight, not two. One headlight is off because it's a sakana. It's a mock-up sakana for you, it's a sakana for him, and you should give him musr, not musr or techacha, reprimand, that he's endangering his life by going into a vehicle that has one headlight not working. And this is kind of unilateral, because the person can agree with this, that's something that's usher for them, anyone to do. So it's not a matter of like being lazy and not putting it in. It's not a matter of just being totally just callous, but it's about being negligent in a halacha of shmiras hanefesh and shmiras haguf. That we have to be careful with ourselves and not. Hashem gave us a body and the health He gave us, so we have to be careful to preserve that. And going into a car which is absent one headlight is dangerous. Chas v'shalom, because somebody sees a head at nighttime, a car with one headlight, could think it's just a bicycle with a headlight. And he thinks the space is much less than it is. Who knows what chas v'shalom can happen? Therefore, it is very dangerous, and therefore, it's also to enter a car, go long enough a ride with someone who has one headlight missing.
What about if somebody has their license missing? Say a person knows that somebody does not have a license or doesn't have it with them, or doesn't have a license or only has a permit. Are you allowed, do you have to admonish the person, or are you allowed to report that person directly to the authorities? Say, this person's driving without a license.
It's interesting, that Shaila, I was asked to Menashe Klein, Zecher Tzadik HaGoyner, Menashe Klein, Zecher Tzadik Levracha, in Mishnah Halachos, and I think that, if I remember correctly, he says that somebody driving without a license is like a shor hamuad, like a dangerous ox. And I must say that I myself once, and I did it a few times, for a period I did it, unfortunately. At one point I did it with a permit, but that was permissible. But at one point I did it, as a young kid, I was just kind of, derelict and acting my age, and then acting with smarts and seichel. And but I haven't done this. I can talk about 30, 40 years. I haven't done that. Less than that, maybe. Right. It was 40 years close to I haven't done that. Before that, I didn't drive. But this is and once in a while I would drive without a license. But it's Osir al Pidin, and Menashe Klein says that you're allowed to go and report him to authorities. If I'm not mistaken, you can look at. I think he has a general index in the back of his phone.
Without admonishing, giving the person techacha first.
If the person promises you, if you go to me and admonish him, and he promises I'll never do it again, then there's no reason for you to go to the authorities. But if he's driving and you see him driving now and he's running all over the place and you have no time to speak to him, he says, if you have no time, if you see somebody has no license, you have a right to go. And according to him, I'm not paskening, you have to discuss this with your Rav. According to him, I think there's a license to go to the authorities.
Some people, we may have noticed, when they're driving, they consider the highway or the roadway to be their own personal garbage can. Is there any problem with people who just take something and toss it out the window, whether it be a can or a candy bar wrapper, particularly if it might have something which might indicate that it might have been a Jewish product that they were throwing outside the window?
That I understand why you asked that question, obviously, because you considering the issue of Chil Hashem, that dimension of it, which is Chil Hashem. But not only that, it is also this halach and Chosh Mishpat. The Ramah brings down that a place that is expected to be kept clean, like the taxpayers pay money to keep the streets clean. There's trucks that run around and buff the sidewalks, whatever they do, and get the stuff off the streets. So they don't want it to be. I mean, there are garbage cans standing there, and there are definitely everybody wants the streets to be clean.
But on the highway, person's traveling 60 miles an hour, they finish their candy bar, open up the window.
The government expects all those roads to be clean. And if they have that expectation, then to violate that expectation, says in Ramon Rabbi, he's a questionable how grave his Aveira is, but it's prohibited to do. If Rabbi, it's prohibited to drop personal things in a Rabbi.
What about speeding? Somebody's in a hurry and they want to get somewhere, and it's not an emergency, but they decide, look, they don't see anybody around, and they decide, why not get there a little bit faster and make some time? What about speeding?
Right. So then you would have to go with the rule of Din de Malchusa and apply that as wherever Din de Malchusa applies. If Din de Malchusa Din applies to these cases with traffic issues, then it would apply here as well. And I had a Maisa with my other Rebbe, Zechat Hadik L'Bracha, Marana, Rav Tuvi Goldstein, Zechat Hadik L'Bracha. I was coming from some kind of a chassan. It was like 1:30 in the morning, and and somebody driving him. He actually was Nifta, a young Talmud of his as well, and he was driving, and he told the Rosh Yeshiva, Rav Tuvi Goldstein, Shiva Emek Halacha, he said to him, Rebbe, he says, I'm looking around. He was actually 4 blocks from his house. He said, there's nobody here. It's empty. The streets are empty. Can I just go through ahead? I mean, what's the big deal if I just go through the red light? I mean, it's not hurting anybody. Nobody get hurt. And you can't go. You're not allowed to go.
Even if nobody was there, you have to stop.
That's what he said, right?
And that would apply to the idea of speeding also. So the notion of everybody else does it is not acceptable.
But the poskim actually say what's more serious, a bigger violation, actually, besides din l'malchus din, it could be issa d'oraisa, is if one tells somebody, listen, nobody's here, go, please, can you go do it? 'Cause I need to get home. and he doesn't know about din l'malchus din. He just knows that, we didn't think about ever doing that when there's nobody around. And he goes and does it. So it could be dangerous. Who knows? Especially does it in tells him to drive a long distance, like from Baltimore to New York, to hurry up and go past the speed limit. He's over lifnei. Rambam says in Trumas, the Mishnah Shumas, Rambam says that a person is over lifnei. Even bedibur, if you encourage somebody bedibur, you don't do an action to someone to make a person nichshel an avera. If you encourage him with words to do an avera, you're over. The way it's out from Rambam is Yisad Deraisa of lifnei evil sit to nichshel. At least Yisad Rabbanon for sure. Which is the Chinuch learns could be of giving him Eitz Shehena again. That's what Rashi learns is the Deraisa, giving him bad advice. Maybe the Deraisa Lifnei. But whatever it is, it's also to do, also to encourage others to do what's not permitted to do, and it can be dangerous as well. Thank you very much, Kol Tov. Thank you.